Have you ever noticed how the kindest people often finish last? Not always, but just enough to make you wonder. Is there a rule to the game you were never taught? A memo that got lost on its way to your desk? We are told from childhood that goodness is its own reward, that honesty is the best policy, that being virtuous will lead to a fulfilled life, and for the most part, we want to believe it. We build our lives on this foundation. We trust in the inherent fairness of the world, but what if that foundation is built on sand? What if the real rules are different, whispered only in the halls of power, in the boardrooms where fortunes are made and lost, in the quiet conversations between leaders who shape our world? This isn't about being cynical. It's about being awake. It's about understanding the shadows as well as the light. Niccolo Machiavelli, a name that has echoed for 5 centuries, tried to hand us a torch to see in the dark. But we, for the most part, have been too afraid of what it might reveal. We brand him as a teacher of evil, a proponent of tyranny, because it's easier to dismiss the message than to grapple with its unsettling truth. His most famous work, The Prince, wasn't written for the common person. It was a private manual for a ruler, a job application, some might say. It was a stark, unvarnished look at what it truly takes to acquire and maintain power. And his warning, the one you're not supposed to know, is brutally simple. The world is not as it should be, and to act as if it is will lead you to ruin. He asks us to see the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. A world where people are, in his own words, ungrateful, fickle, pretenders and dissemblers, evaders of danger, eager for gain. A harsh assessment, perhaps. But look around. Look at the news. Look at the way people behave when they think no one is watching. Is he entirely wrong? The warning is a call to abandon our comforting illusions. The illusion that everyone plays by the same rules, that your good intentions will always be met with good intentions in return, that being morally right is enough to protect you. Machiavelli suggests that in a world of wolves, the sheep is always the first to be eaten, not because the sheep is morally wrong, but because the sheep is strategically naive. It's a terrifying thought, because it forces us to confront a deep-seated psychological conflict within ourselves, the conflict between our ideal self and our strategic self. We all have an image of who we want to be, compassionate, fair, and principled. This is our ideal self, nourished by stories of heroes and saints. But to survive and thrive in a competitive world, we often have to make difficult choices. Choices that might not align with that perfect image. This is our strategic self, the part of us that understands the necessity of compromise, of leverage, of sometimes choosing the lesser of two evils. This isn't about becoming a monster. It's about acknowledging the monster that can sometimes exist in others, and even in ourselves. Think of the cognitive dissonance this creates. Cognitive dissonance is the mental discomfort we experience when holding 2 or more contradictory beliefs or values. For example, you believe you are a kind person, but one day at work, you have to make a decision that will lead to a colleague losing their job, a colleague you like. The company says it's for the greater good, to save the jobs of many others. Your ideal self screams that this is wrong, that you are causing harm to someone, but your strategic self understands the grim calculus of the situation, that inaction could lead to a worse outcome for everyone. You are caught in the middle, and the stress of that contradiction is immense. This is the space where Machiavelli lives. He doesn't tell you to enjoy the cruel choice. He simply tells you that the choice will inevitably come, and that pretending it won't is a form of self-deception. The world, he argues, will force you to choose between being good and being effective. And he warns that if you are a leader, your personal virtue might be a luxury you cannot afford. Because if your goodness leads to the collapse of your state, or your company, or even your family, what good was it, really? Consider the story of a small business owner, a woman who started a bakery from her own kitchen. She treats her employees like family, pays them above the market rate, gives them flexible hours. She is the model of a virtuous leader. But a large, soulless corporation moves in next door. They undercut her prices. They operate at a loss just to drive her out of business. Her virtue, her kindness, her fairness is now a liability. To save her business, she might have to make choices that hurt her ideal self. She might have to lower her prices, which means cutting salaries. She might have to be stricter with hours. She is forced to play a game with rules she did not create. She must choose between her ruin and acting in a way that feels unnatural to her. This is Machiavelli's world. It's not a world devoid of morality, but a world where morality is complex, situational, and sometimes tragically insufficient. He teaches that to achieve a great good, one must sometimes be willing to do a little bad, that a ruler who is too squeamish to make hard decisions will ultimately cause more suffering than the one who is willing to be pragmatic, a concept we call consequentialism, where the morality of an action is judged solely by its consequences. Is it better to be a leader who is loved but presides over chaos and failure, or a leader who is feared but provides stability and security? Machiavelli's answer is clear. It is safer to be feared than loved, because love is fickle and depends on the gratitude of others, a gratitude that, as he points out, is in short supply. Fear, however, is constant. It is a motivator you can control. This sounds tyrannical, and it certainly can be, but let's reframe it. Is it fear, or is it a profound respect for consequences? When a parent sets a firm boundary for a child, is it out of a desire to be tyrannical, or is it out of a deep understanding that certain actions have dangerous consequences? The parent knows the child might not love the rule in the moment, but the rule is there to protect them, to ensure their long-term well-being. The parent is acting pragmatically, not cruelly. They understand that a little bit of unpleasantness now can prevent a catastrophe later. The warning, then, is not an invitation to cruelty. It is an invitation to clarity, to see people as they are, to understand the systems as they function, and to recognize that the path to a noble goal is often unpaved, winding, and fraught with moral ambiguity. He asks us to be students of power, not for the sake of dominating others, but for the sake of not being dominated ourselves. To understand the tactics of your rivals is not to become them. It is to be able to defend yourself against them. To know that deception exists is not to become a deceiver. It is to become harder to deceive. We are taught to trust, but we are rarely taught how to verify. We are taught to be open, but rarely how to be discerning. This imbalance, this strategic innocence, is what Machiavelli warns against. He argues that you cannot rely on the goodwill of others for your safety and success. You must rely on your own strength, your own wits, your own foresight, your own virtù, a concept often mistranslated as virtue, but which for him meant something more like skill, excellence, and martial prowess. The ability to impose your will on fortune, to shape your own destiny rather than be a passive victim of circumstance. Think about how this applies to your own life. Have you ever been let down because you placed too much faith in someone's promises? Have you ever been outmaneuvered in a negotiation because you assumed the other party was as invested in fairness as you were? Have you ever seen a brilliant, talented person fail because they didn't know how to play the game? This is not a failure of their character. It is a failure of their education. They were taught how to be a good person, but not how to operate in a world that is not always good. And so you are left with a question, a deeply uncomfortable one. How do you navigate this world, a world that demands both goodness and strength, virtue and cunning. How do you remain true to your ideals without becoming a casualty of someone else's ambition? Can you be a good person and also be effective? Can you hold on to your soul while also holding on to your power? Machiavelli doesn't give us a comforting answer. He just pulls back the curtain and shows us the gears of the machine. A machine that has been running for centuries and continues to run today. A machine that operates on the hard currency of power and self-interest, regardless of our feelings about it. The first step, his warning implies, is simply to see it, to acknowledge it, without flinching, without judgment. Just to see. What if the most dangerous lie we've ever been told is that we should always be ourselves? A seemingly beautiful piece of advice, liberating, authentic. But is it wise? Is your raw, unfiltered, authentic self always the right person to bring to the table? Is the self that is angry, the self that is insecure, the self that is lazy, truly the one that will serve you best in every situation? Or is the ability to manage your persona, to present a calculated version of yourself, not a sign of inauthenticity, but a sign of profound social intelligence? Machiavelli understood this on a deep level. He knew that appearances are a form of power, that what people believe to be true is often more important than what is actually true.